What's up, horror fans? It's Danny from the Lassercast with my brother from another mother, Pete. What's going on, Pete?
Nothing much, man. I got a little Cthulhu statue. He's pretty cool, right?
Ah, nice. We
Yeah, I
are
got.
here. We are here to talk about Cthulhu statues. We are here to talk about the 47th birthday of the greatest movie ever made, Jaws. God, I wish we were. No, we are here on this Monday morning to talk about Mad God, the passion project of one of the legends of the industry, Phil Tippett, which just dropped on Shudder last Thursday, I believe. Uh, we both watched this movie. I think a better way to say it is we both experienced this movie. Uh, Pete, what's going on? And why don't you tell us what you thought?
Okay, so this movie's real interesting to me because it took 30 years to make, and Phil Tippett, he was basically around from like the dawn of the modern special effects age, right? He was around for the original Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back. He worked on RoboCop. He was a stop motion guy, and he eventually created something called Go Motion. And then there goes Danny's cat has some Go Motion going up the wall over
Yeah,
there.
really.
But what's interesting about him, I would have known all of this. I'd heard his name, obviously, but the reason why I had any interest in this movie, any interest in him, is because of David Weiner and doing our, In Search of Tomorrow video. And he said that he interviewed Phil Tippett and he talked about this movie, right? Um, it's like you said, a passion project, and basically for 30 years, basically from the late 80s to now, he has been just working on this movie like on the weekends when he had free time from other movies. And it's just this interesting thing. I don't think that it has really like a narrative. It doesn't have a plot really. It's just kind of an experience, like you said. And I was going to ask you, Danny, are there any movies that you've watched that you've enjoyed that weren't really like stories, but were more like just kind of weird experiences, like maybe like Eraserhead or something like that?
I mean, there's movies there are movies that have like don't have the narrative structure that I've gotten into. There was it Blood Machines? I think there was a movie on Shudder last year called Blood
Right.
Machines that was released in parts. It was almost episodic, and that was really cool, and I enjoyed that. Um, I feel like had this been something similar to that, where I looked on IMDb and it said like Mad God, like 2015, 2018. And I feel like if this had been released in a series of 15 to 20-minute shorts, I would have really enjoyed it. As an 85-minute movie,
All right.
it was a lot to take in. And but yeah, like there are certainly experimental films that like I don't know if I like because like, there is a narrative to it, but like a
Yeah.
movie like The Lighthouse, like I know that like a lot of people would walk out of a movie like The Lighthouse and go like that was just ridiculous. Like what even was that? And I enjoyed the hell out of that movie. I thought it was my favorite, one of my like top 3 or 4 movies of the year it came out, either I think 2018 or 19. Uh like the way it was presented in like the aspect ratio in the theater, the way that the acting was done, like it was just so not it was so experimental uh, for Robert Eggers to do a movie that way. And I know that there's obviously a narrative there. What are you doing back there? Thank God. But yeah, typically though, I have to be honest, I'm not a huge fan of the I am a big fan of narrative structure. I do like I like when a movie jumps around with narrative structures. They're pain in the ass. Oh my God. This is my life. This is my life. The cat's jumping on everything. Hey, look,
Right.
she knocked Dr. Zayas off.
Oh my God, that might be a sign. She's saying, "Give Mad God another chance."
You know, one movie, and you brought up Eraserhead. There is obvious allusions to Eraserhead in this movie. In one particular scene where it's undeniable that that is what he was going for. I wrote down somewhere. I wrote, oh my God, that fucking Lynch baby. But another
Wait, was that your cat stepping on piano keys?
Yeah, that was. This is my life. Another movie that this reminded me of that was also very similar, especially at the very end, was 2001. And
Yes.
2001 was a movie that it took me a very long time to fully appreciate. I saw the movie when I was in high school, and I was just like, what in the hell was that? It's so long, it's so boring, nothing happens, this is stupid, why are there monkeys fighting each other? And it got re-released probably about 5 years ago now, for whatever anniversary it was, and I just decided, you know what, enough time's passed, let me go to the movies. And I went by myself, and I sat there, and I was just in awe, and I was like, wow, okay, I get it now. And I feel like, okay, maybe 20 years from now, I'll revisit Mad God and I'll feel like that, but I also kind of doubt it. Yeah. Like I wrote down, I said, and I actually, somebody posted this in one of the horror groups that I'm in on Facebook. Somebody posted, I was really looking forward to seeing Mad God, and I didn't like it, and I feel like people will judge me for it. And like they gave it like a 5 out of 10, and a lot of the comments in there were kind of agreeing. Where like I think because Phil Tippett is such a legend, the initial response to this was like, it's his vision, so we love it. But I think once you take a step back from that and you just view it through your own eyes, not through the eyes of, oh my God, Phil Tippett is a legend, it's something else. There are things that are not mutually exclusive. Phil Tippett is an absolute legend. I respect the hell out of his vision and his dedication to this project and to the work that he did. And I hated this movie. Those three things are not mutually exclusive. And I think so. And that being said, I would totally recommend anyone watch this movie because, like you said, this is a guy who won an Oscar, an honorary Oscar for Return of the freaking Jedi. This is the guy responsible. This is like the heir apparent to Ray Harryhausen. To the point where, I don't know if you noticed, did you notice that the Harryhausen Cyclops was shown on screen a few times? So like, this is a guy who this is the guy who made Ed 209. So if you're into that stop motion, which I typically am, and there were parts of this where I was blown away watching it, but then like I was immediately like, oh, what the?
You know, it's funny. You bring up a point that I think is almost worthy of an entire video, like a video essay. That I think it'd be cool, like to edit it and show footage along with it. But like, you and I often discuss social media and how people respond to certain movies. And on social media, like sometimes you'll even forward things to me. Like, people have reactions to movies before they even see the fucking movies these days, right? And sometimes we'll have this kind of conversation where it's like, oh, it's like Ghostbusters Afterlife, for instance, right? Like, you and I were divided on Ghostbusters Afterlife. You really enjoyed it. You felt like it was a good homage to the original movie, and you liked the characters. And, you know, I felt like it was too much like, hey, remember this? Remember this? And people make up their minds when it comes to this kind of stuff. Like there's someone that's in that camp with me, and there's someone that's in that camp with you about that movie before they even see it with their eyes, right? You said about this movie that there is this reverence for it because it took 30 years to make, and it's by this guy who made all these special effects for these iconic movies that we grew up with, right? I think that that's a very, very interesting point, and it makes me kind of second guess how I felt about it. However, about 10 minutes into this movie, I was like, okay, this is not the kind of movie where I can like look away and like look at my cell phone and start like texting somebody or like just look up something real quick. I have to focus on this movie, and because I'm going to talk about it, and like I want to make sure that I have like analyzed it and I've tried to get as much out of it as I could. And ultimately, I did not think that there was really a story. I think that there is obviously there's all different types of movies, right? And the most controlled, like plot derived movies are like the ones where it's like we have to hit this story beat at this point in the movie, and this has to happen. And I feel like that's kind of like the mainstream big budget movies where it's like you can predict everything from a mile away because it's just like it's following all these formulas. And that's on one end of the spectrum. And on the other end of the spectrum is stuff where it's like, this doesn't even seem to have any kind of narrative. This is just random imagery. What the hell's going on? And I keep kind of referencing David Lynch, but I feel like he, for me, captures that, right? And like I watched Mulholland Drive like last year, and as I was watching, I was like, okay, what the fuck is going on here? And I know so many people love Mulholland Drive. It's like their favorite David Lynch movie. And I felt the same way when I watched Twin Peaks: The Return. I'm like, what is going on here? And I would watch all these YouTube videos where people would explain, well, this means this, and this means this, and he's doing a commentary on this. And I feel like sometimes people give meaning to things that a person like David Lynch or maybe like Phil Tippett with this movie, they're not trying to tell like a specific statement. They just have this image in their head of like, okay, this is what I see. Let me get it on film. And I really feel like that's what Mad God is. I feel like it's like he has this imagery in his head and he puts it onto film, and it's not like this commentary on like fascism or war, even though there is stuff like that in it.
Yeah.
I just feel like it's just the image is coming into my head. How do I practically make that?
So
and
like we're both teachers, and like we know, and we from our experience that there's kids that learn in different ways, right? Phil Tippett, to me, while watching this, and what you were just saying made me think of this, is when he has a story he wants to tell, he doesn't write it down. He starts to create visually the stop, the go motion stuff.
Right.
And that is incredibly interesting. Typically when I think of like those types of works, I think of stuff that is like gorgeous stuff to watch with the stop motion, the incredible effects, but done within a narrative formula. I like even Ray Harryhausen's work. I remember watching Jason and the Argonauts when I was like a really little kid, and like my dad being like really excited to show me like, you know, Jason and them fight the skeletons. At Clash of the Titans, you know, and Medusa and the Kraken and all those things. And then, you know, even taking it to like A Nightmare Before Christmas, and that type of stop motion work, where I'm watching this and I'm watching and I'm looking at the visuals and I'm going, okay, he obviously has something to say here about religion. It starts with a Bible quote from Leviticus, which is, you know, God is really angry and he's going to, he is going to create shit monsters and eat maggots and, you know, squish the Eraserhead baby into mush. He's going to do all these things. He also obviously has a lot to say about, at least I interpreted, like he has a lot of things to say about corporate greed, with the fact that you have this guy, the assassin, going down and down and down into the depths of the under civilization, and then at the end, like civilization is like beaming back up. I felt that there was a lot about like greed, and I kind of thought about like Tippett himself, like feeling that he was being replaced by computers, with Jurassic Park.
Right.
So I feel like there is a lot to say. It was just as amazing as it was, and I think this is where I really disliked the movie. As amazing as the stop motion work was,
yeah,
it was such an ugly movie. like when I say that there were shit monsters, like there are literal shit monsters in this, and it's like somewhere in Phil Tippett's mind, he was like, so we need to have this monstrous troll-looking thing with these big fleshy eyeballs eat gross things, shit them out. That shit will go into a blender and make these shit people that will walk around and do manual shit labor until they're squished and transformed into other. And at one point, I'm sitting there and I'm going, is this like some fetish thing that I don't like? It really. And then like I made a joke. I think was it you who I messaged last night where I was like, "Oh, good, the maggots are out now."
No, you didn't message me. No.
I think I posted somewhere. I was like, "Oh, good, I'm up to the maggot scene, the maggot eating scene in Mad God. Wonderful." Like it just kept devolving and devolving to a point where I was like, "It's funny." So last night, to end my Father's Day, Charlotte and I went to see what is probably my second favorite horror movie of all time, The Thing, in the movie theater. And on the way home, Charlotte said, "What's the grossest movie? Like, what's the goriest and grossest movie you've ever seen?" And I'm like, the Saw movies, Cannibal Holocaust, Hostel. I'm like trying to think of like Hellraiser. I'm trying to think of all these. And then like I'm sitting at like 11 o'clock last night on the couch and I'm going, well, when she asks me this question again, I think I'm going to have a new answer because Mad God is right up there now.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned your daughter because I was watching it and I was like, oh, can I show this to my kid? I thought initially because obviously there's disturbing stuff, but like it gets tuned up pretty quickly. Like once you get to the point where there's like the assassin is looking through like goggles or whatever, and he's looking at this apartment complex or some kind of building where there's a bunch of people, and there's like a kid watching porn in one window, and then there's a woman being stabbed. I was like, oh, maybe not. And then the assassin eventually gets captured, and there's this long extended sequence where they're just like ripping his innards out and throwing it down on a table.
That was the scene. That was where, by the way, like when I mentioned, I felt like there was some, like the idea that they are ripping like they're giving him an autopsy by basically ripping him open and just. But they're not only are they pulling out blood and guts, but they're pulling out like money and gold and stuff from his insides. And I'm like, oh, okay. So where humanity is filled with, wealth. And I'm like, it's funny because Tippett actually did win an Oscar as part of the crew for Jurassic Park. I wanted to send this to you, but all I kept thinking of was Ian Malcolm. With at the end of the movie, I was like, you were so preoccupied with whether or not that you didn't stop to think if you should. When it came to this movie, like,
yes,
could I do all this? I could. It's going to take me 30 years. It's going to, it's going to be this feverish passion project that's going to eat away with me. And here it is, folks. And then I'm watching it going, dear Lord, what is this?
I got worried there, man. You started to quote Ian Malcolm. I thought you were going to be like, that's one big pile of shit, you know?
Well, in this movie, both literally and figuratively.
Yeah, look, here's the thing, right? Is that I was thinking after you made this point, you said, maybe we have this reverence for it because Phil Tippett made it and it took 30 years. And I was thinking, if I had seen this and I didn't know who made it, and maybe they were like, oh, this was made by some amateur guy you've never heard of, would I still appreciate it? And I think that just knowing the effort that went into it to make it in itself, the effort in itself is super appealing to me, or it makes it more exciting to me. Like, I was thinking that when it comes to the arts themselves, right? I think that our movies that we're so focused on, the stuff that like me and Brian cover on Comic Books Transformed with like these Disney Plus shows and Star Wars and all this kind of pop culture shit, that's so like narrative focused, where it's almost like character development, any kind of abstract imagery, that stuff is like secondary to just like plot, right? Like plot is the main thing. Then that's on one end of the spectrum. I mentioned this before, but then there's the idea of like just visual art. Like you go into MoMA, or you go into, an art museum, and there's just art on display. And it evokes a feeling, but it's for everyone to interpret. And I feel like this movie is much more just like visual art versus a narrative story. And it's interesting that you gleaned a few different points from it about, greed and religion and stuff like that, because I think that's there. I definitely think he's trying to say certain things. However, like for me, as like a storyteller, I get super inspired when I go to an art museum, because I'll look at something that's very like abstract or doesn't kind of make sense, but it just like starts to fire off those neurons and it gets me creatively thinking. And that's what this movie is like for me. It's like, I don't know what the fuck I'm looking at, but I know that that's going to generate a story in my mind.
And again, I'm there with you in that regard, in the sense that this is a rare case of a movie I absolutely did not like that I would 100% recommend because of who Phil Tippett is, the work and the dedication he poured into this project, and because somebody is going to watch this, and even if they're grossed out by what they're watching, they might look at the art form of the stop motion, the go motion that he does, and they might go, that's incredible. I want to dive deeper into that. And so, yeah, I would totally recommend people going to Shudder and checking this movie out. It's just not for me. This was one of those movies that 10 minutes into it, if like we weren't talking about it today, I probably would have turned it off. This is an 85-minute movie that felt like it was 2.5 hours for me. Okay. But again, that's just, it's, I don't know. I respect the hell out of him, and I respect the process. The end result is not something that appeals to me, but it probably appeals to a lot of people. Like, it's getting a lot of people who are watching it are saying the same thing that, you kind of said, where it's, like, we're so happy to see, him be able to make this after all these years. And, we're so excited to watch it. And, it's gotten some very good reviews, and that's great. And there is an audience for movies like this.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that, that's part of like being critical about films, is recognizing that while something might not be for you, other people can gain stuff from it.
Yeah.
Unlike Jurassic Park Dominion, which is just that's a one big pile of shit.
Look at that. He wrapped it up. He did a little shot at that shitty movie too. Yeah, I mean, look, well put. I don't have much to add to that. I mean, we could like analyze the movie in depth and go through scene for scene, but that's not what we have time for today. in the end, you say go to Shudder. Like, let the person determine themselves. It is that kind of movie. It's not the kind of movie where we can point out flaws in it. It's like really up for the audience's interpretation. And I'm real grateful that it exists because it is so different from what we normally cover.
100%.
I could not watch a movie like this all the time for this channel. I need like narrative movies just like you do. But every so often, it's good to get something that's like so weird and so out there that it gets that creative process going. It gets your imagination going. So I think it's worth watching just for that.
Yeah,
so,
I agree.
Yeah. So I know that you gotta go head out to an appointment and stuff. So just like real quick, just one thing to plug for our show. I'm almost done editing this interview I did with Laurel Hightower. So she that should come out, I think, by Wednesday. And then, Danny and I and Charlotte and Pepper need to cover the end of Stranger Things because Pepper and I did finish it.
Oh, nice.
And shit, we have a ton of like author interviews coming up between now and July. So, yeah. So if you guys have not liked and subscribed, please do. And did you have anything else you want to throw in there too, or?
I mean, just things that are up on the channel. If you haven't watched HBO Max's The Baby, it was only 8 episodes, and it is done. The first season's over. The episodes are 25 to 35 minutes, and it's really great. And I reviewed all 8 episodes. Check that out. Charlotte and I have been going to see John Carpenter movies in the theater. We saw The Fog and The Thing, and she just watched one of your favorites, In the Mouth of Madness. And we're going to try to do a like John Carpenter list by the end of the summer. So we got a lot more work to do. Yeah.
Okay.
We got some more work to do. But yeah,
nice.
That's like, unless like I just watch something cool and decide to throw up a review, that's pretty much what I got right now.
Nice. Okay. And Danny puts out content like multiple times a week, so make sure you guys are subscribed. Otherwise, check out our Laurel Hightower interview, and we will see you guys next week.